It's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to Foley is Pod. And of course, we couldn't do it without the hardcore legend himself, the Hall of Famer, Mick Foley. Mick, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, and it's so good to be back in studio. Last show we did live from Australia, but it just felt like something was missing.
It was a little different.
So when I watched it back, I was like, oh, man, I'm a big believer in doing everything as well as you can possibly do it. I think I do it the best when I'm right here in studio.
Well, we're excited to have you back, but I am curious, how did your experience go? We heard maybe at the halfway point how things were going, and I know there was maybe a comedy of errors with your stuff, but I saw a video that went a little viral of you on stage singing a song, and I just got to hear more.
Oh, man. Well, first of all, we were closing shows. I mean, the first night, you learn as you go. So one of the comics gave me a tip and said, I don't think you should do the birthday songs up front. Do that a little bit later after people get a feel for what your show is. And then, so I started doing it before doing the cameo songs and the birthday songs that we've heard some of. Started doing them right before the Q&A. But we realized in Australia, it's a great way to go out. So the promoter heard me do the first one, which was "Dude is wishing you," the Drifters White Christmas one. And then we did the My Way takeoff the second night. And what was incredible is that luckily I've got this mask, Mankind mask, still beaten up. I don't so much as pull it on as place it on.
Right.
So it allows for a very quick change. And when I go from dude to being Mankind, like literally whirl around and I'm the different character, and I say, yes, there were times, you slipped and fell like the time that I was thrown off the cell, the crowd pops as if they're getting like a babyface return at a wrestling match. And it was, it's funny how it's more pronounced in certain towns, but the final night we ended up in Auckland, which was one that I was concerned about. I would have wished for a little better sales. But once you're there and you've got what you got, and it was still, right around 300 people, it was almost a magical experience as compared to the night before in Christchurch, where the day that started off tremendously, not tremendously, because you have to fly everywhere when you're in New Zealand or Australia. You don't really drive from town to town because they're so spread out. So I would have to get up at 4:30 or 5, and I'm not a morning person. Get over there, and I was pretty exhausted by the time we arrived in Christchurch, New Zealand. And then I hear the buzz that the Wiggle were on the plane. So, and they had the whole crew with them. Like half the plane was Wiggles personnel, and so I see the blue Wiggle, Anthony, and the purple Wiggle, Jeff, the one who was always falling asleep. We're parents, like we know about these guys.
I know about the Wiggles.
And so it turns out that they were fans, right? A couple of them, Anthony and Jeff, were fans, and there was a newer Wiggle who plays bass and drums, and he was a big fan. So that I leave them tickets, and I say I'm going to dedicate a version of Fruit Salad to you. Fruit Salad, Fruit Salad, yummy, yummy. It's not an exaggeration to say that's an iconic song, right?
For sure.
So I found a great karaoke version that would have the lyrics up there for the crowd to sing along. I must have practiced that thing 50 times to where I was nailing it. I was in character as dude. And then it reminded me so much of when I was Raw GM and would completely draw a blank. The problem was there was no Stephanie McMahon to walk over and give me a couple buzzwords to put me on the right path. And in my head, even though the lyrics are up there, I'm confusing the song's Fruit Salad with an old Tom T. Hall song called Everybody Loves to Hear a Bird Sing. These one's about making a fruit salad, the other's about making bird food. And instead of saying step one, peel your banana, I was thinking, first you buy some peanut butter, spread it all over. And I just drew a blank. And if you've ever, and the more I tried to get back on track, the worse it got to where I just I like called it off and I cursed audibly twice, even threw a GD in there.
Wow.
So that's, I mean, I was, because there were two Wiggles in the audience, and here I am doing this song. And as soon as boom, fruit salad, the crowd knew it, right? Like everybody grows up watching these guys. So the promoter realized I was in dire straits, and he said, Mick, why don't you at least lead the crowd through the chorus one more time? So that's what you saw.
I see.
The video after I was visibly dejected, and they did get with it, and they did a great job. But the night before in Wellington, I ran into an issue I'd never had, where some nights are darker than others as far as what you can see out there.
Yeah.
So this in Wellington, we're sold out, right? 305 people, sold it. Son of a bitch. Yeah. Me and Robert, brother, you've never seen so many people.
Hanging from the rafters.
There was no one else on the card. It was just Ricky, Robert on the marquee.
Yes.
Ricky, Robert, no one else. Just those guys selling that son. So we sold that son of a bitch out. And about 2 minutes, I hear this here. I hear this like, and it sounds to me like Sylvester Stallone bouncing the little Baldine ball on the ground in the first Rocky.
Yeah.
And so it's loud enough and often enough that I said, I just said, hey, what's going on here? And I hear someone say, it's a tech. I thought that meant a technical problem. But with the accent, I couldn't hear what he's actually saying was, it's a tick. It was a transgender. When I messed that up, when I said young lady and found out, I was, young man, and found out I was, incorrect with that too. But so I thought it was just a technical issue.
Right.
And then, if you've seen my show, it depends on having dramatic pauses.
Yes.
Followed by, punchline or the revelation of a story that sometimes, or a whimsical remark. And when I would pause, I start hearing this, F off. Oh
my gosh.
Like a ghost. Like a ghost. F off, and they're just saying the word. And so that's when I realized it's not a technical problem. I don't even tie the two together. I said, who's saying that? And I lift up the lights, and the woman says, I'm sorry, my child has Tourette's. And I said, hey, I'm an autism dad. We're all in this thing together. I'm just so glad that you could be here, and please enjoy the rest of the show. And then they turn down the lights, and I hear, F you. But I'd never had that experience in my life. But then once that got a major pop, and then once I addressed it, like the elephant in the room, as they say, everyone was free to understand it a little better.
Yes.
And the show went on, even though the person kept saying F you. And they came up for the meet and greet, and they were really happy. But
did you sign their 8x10 F off? That would have been fantastic. My gosh.
Oh man.
This is a trip you'll never forget. Fair to say?
Oh yeah, it was a good trip. But anyone who's ever been over there knows it's grueling because of the wake ups. And it's like word gets out that I like Tim Tams, which is like a national snack.
Okay.
A chocolate coated graham cracker. They have all kinds of different.
How many of those did you get?
Well, they start giving me not only the regular pack, which is sizable, but the family pack.
Oh, wow.
And I'd be like, I cannot be alone in my hotel. Can't leave me alone. So I'd have to open up the pack and
hear everyone enjoy.
Everybody. That's what I'll do. I'll tell you when I gained the most weight in WWE is when the word got out, Rock would talk about chocolate chip cookies. And Rock was a big proponent of the cheat day.
Right.
But the other 6 days, he was incredibly strict with his diet. So he's maybe indulging in a couple cookies once a week, but they were arriving en masse, like 3 to 4 dozen, three separate cookies, 3 to 4 dozen each. And I'd be there alone at the end of the night. And my knees are starting to act up, my hips getting bad. So I'm kind of drowning my pain with the sweet stuff. And that was part of the reason I picked up so much weight. Not placing it all at the Rock's feet, but had he not mentioned the chocolate chip cookies, chances are I would have been under $3 for those final Cactus Jack matches.
Well, this is the time of the program where you give a shameless plug to your old friend who's down on his luck, trying to make a buck.
Oh, yeah.
He's got this new product. He's trying to hope something hits for him.
He's hoping something. He's got a movie called Black Adam, and he's kind of promoting it. I guess desperate times call for desperate measures.
Clearly.
But it's a heck of an energy drink, my favorite energy drink. And I just hope fate will be with him a little bit. It's dealt him a harsh hand these last few years.
It really has.
So here's to you, Dwayne Johnson.
So since we're talking about recent times, you and I have not really had a chance to see each other in person since the wrestling world has changed.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit last week. It's hard to imagine a WWE without Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
And you shared your thoughts about, Vince McMahon and his legacy, and more importantly, what he did for your family.
Oh, yeah.
But now everyone's talking about what's this going to look like with Hunter? And we're going to be talking about SummerSlam 97 today, your opponent in that match.
Yeah.
So before we talk about 97, let's talk about today. Have you had a chance to see much of the Hunter era of WWE?
Not as much as I would have liked, but I have caught 2 Raws when I was overseas, and I've been reading about these returns. And this is what I'll do. I'll simplify things. I'll go back to an article I wrote on Facebook a few years ago. It said, WWE, we have a problem. And that got a lot of attention.
I remember.
Rightfully so, because I was basically saying the problem is, given the kind of haphazard booking where it's either feast or famine, you take guys who perform well and produce results everywhere they went, just kind of cast aside. And I think the most mysterious debut of all was Karrion Kross arriving without Scarlett.
And in a silly outfit.
Yeah, in a silly outfit, and losing in day one in 90 seconds.
Yeah.
And I remember someone trying to cover him for him, going, "Hey, no, this isn't NXT. He's still the undefeated NXT." It's like, you only get one chance to make a first impression.
Right.
And I think now they're kind of just dismissing that he was ever even in.
Yeah, thankfully.
And has him back with Scarlett, which is a great,
and they're great people in real life.
Yeah.
Too.
And they really deserve this break.
Yes.
And so what I'm seeing is that people are getting, the talent is, they're getting a second chance, that the cream is rising to the top. I think there's more of a sense that you're playing to win instead of playing not to lose.
Yes.
Which is really important. So I think, mistakes are accepted as an unavoidable byproduct of growth, and that people are not under the same pressure they were to be perfect all the time, which means you're nowhere close to perfect any of the time.
Right.
And I would say the best compliment I can give the new Hunter regime is that I do not think WWE has that problem. And that was the biggest problem I saw of the last few years. I love Vince McMahon. Right?
Yeah.
And I can't think of a time and place where I could have been better utilized. There's so many reasons why my push could have been shortened, not as strong, forgotten. And there's no way you and I are having this conversation without Vince, with a little help from Bruce and JR and The Undertaker. I don't think you can ever dismiss the power of The Undertaker wanting to do business. And even some other guys on my way out, like Kevin Nash, saying, "Hey, the guy's money." Shawn Michaels liked me immediately. And so I had some big proponents. Bret Hart liked working with me. So all the top guys I work with enjoyed it. But still, Vince, to listen to Bruce, who told him, "Hey, this guy's got a more interesting backstory than the fictional portrait you guys have created." And that's where the groundbreaking interviews with Jim Ross came in. So all that ultimately was up to Vince. But I think, so they're just saying a change is as good as a rest. At least it's in a Kinks song. And I know Memphis, for example, they used to, as a matter of,
it was their principled way.
A matter of principle to change over the bookers every 6 months, thinking that you get some fresh eyes on the product. I think the benefit of that is obviously you're changing things up. The knock on it was that guys only had 6 months to produce, and they would do some hot shotting things, which I think we're going to get to in SummerSlam, the match, the night of many gimmicks. But I think it's a really good thing for WWE. I think people are excited. I feel for Mr. McMahon because business was so much a part of his life. So I hope he has some things, and he does have grandchildren and some things to be meaningful. He could still make a huge impact in other ways, but I think I give Triple H an A, and then we'll see in the following few months if that becomes an A+.
There's a lot of momentum right now.
Yeah.
As you and I are talking, I think WrestleMania is sold out. If it's not completely sold out, it almost is. Obviously, that's a long way off. They haven't even.
Conrad, I want to change my answer or just finesse my answer. I did see a clip from when we were in Australia, and the question came up about when I would come back if there was any resentment for taking up a spot of a full-time guy. And I pointed out that Ed said the guys don't see you that way.
Right.
You come in and you work on these programs. With that being said, The Rock's in a different stratosphere.
Of course.
Anytime Dwayne Johnson has a chance to be part of a show,
he should.
The entire dressing room has to understand that this guy is the biggest star in the world. He comes back, he works hard, right? He comes back, he's main evented 2 Manias, right? 2 Manias?
Since he's been gone, you mean?
Yeah, since he's been gone.
Well, I mean, I think they made him the host in Atlanta, and then 2 with Cena back to back, like you said.
2 with Cena back to back. And then he had the run where he came in and he was like the knight in shining armor for me in 2004. So The Rock's place that's perfect. I was the guy getting built up and, building up a program and getting beaten down by Evolution. And then Rock comes riding to the rescue. And with a guy's schedule that busy, he's got to be the busiest man in show business.
For sure.
Right? You have to be grateful for any time that he can come back. And I think, crossing my fingers, even with WrestleMania being sold out, man, I think we would all love to see The Rock and Roman.
I mean, I think everybody is sort of freestyling. That's the match they want. And as you and I are talking this weekend, there's going to be a big show over in Cardiff, a stadium show.
Yeah. And
lots of folks are wondering, hey, is it time for a change? As we're talking now, we just passed 2 full years with Roman Reigns as the champ. And in the current era, that didn't feel like that would ever happen.
Right. Yeah.
They used to flip-flop the title a lot in the last, 2 decades or so. But once upon a time, that was kind of commonplace. The Hogans, the Brunos, etc.
Bruno with the 7-year reign.
Unbelievable. Right? I think Harley even had nearly 3 years with the NWA title, but 2 years.
That's 3 years of going to every city and going, kid, what's your finish? Well, Mr. Ace, I do a drop kick off the top rope. I'll move.
Only Harley. Did you ever think we could see a 2-year reign in modern WWE? It feels like wrestling has changed a lot just in that regard.
Shows a lot of confidence in Roman.
For sure.
And I think I like the run. I would not like to see, just personally, if there's a chance that we see Rock and Roman at WrestleMania for the title, that title's got to stay in the bloodline. And now that we have Sami Zayn, oh man, this guy's just the gift that keeps on giving, right?
Sami Zayn has been one of the most criminally underrated performers. I mean, seriously, everywhere you put that guy, he succeeds. I think a lot of people tuned into our most recent WrestleMania and thought, man, this match with him and Johnny Knoxville is just going to be a train wreck. It was super entertaining.
It may have been a train wreck, but it was a super entertaining train wreck. And there were things that I'd never seen, and it was so ridiculous. I mean, hey, if it's not your image of what wrestling should be, it's not your image of what wrestling should be. But for anyone who kind of has an open mind about that stuff, I think Kevin Owens summed it up best. And there's 2 guys who turn everything they touch into gold.
Yes,
make
absolutely.
The very most out of what they have. He said every second, I keep paraphrasing, but every second of that was epic. And it was that was one of the greatest it was exactly what it needed to be. And it broke up you just can't have guys vying for 5-star matches.
Yes.
One after another, because it just becomes a little jumble in your mind. So I liken it to driving down the road with a new stereo. And I remember doing this in TNA. I spent 4 or 5 hours at the Geek Squad, and they hooked up my 2003 Chevy Venture minivan with the state-of-the-art thing. And as I'm driving to, a long drive to New Orleans from where I was in Florida, and you turn up the volume, but if you turn it up full blast for more than 2 songs, full blast becomes normal.
Yes.
And now when you turn it down to 5, it sounds like it's not even on.
Yes.
So what you want when you're driving down the road, as I believe you want when you're in a major wrestling show, is to have a few peaks and valleys so that your senses can recover. Doesn't mean you're not going to enjoy that next song, but now 4 songs later, let's turn this bad boy up. So I just don't think you can live life or perform a wrestling show with the dial turned to 11 all the time.
Well, and I think Dusty Rhodes once said that, a great wrestling show should be booked like the circus. There's something for everybody. There's the trapeze artists, the lion tamers, the clowns.
I think I even mentioned in one of my books, they said, hey, if you don't like the tightrope walker, maybe you like the 17 clowns piling out of the back of a Ford Pinto.
Yeah.
That might be your thing. You take a kid to the circus and they can't gauge how difficult it is to see someone on the flying trapeze or walking the tightrope, but they can get a kick out of those clowns. So
absolutely.
I agree with you. And I'm not knocking people who go out there and try to steal the show, because that was my mindset for most of my career, but I just don't think that leads to the best epic wrestling showcase possible.
Football fans, the first Sunday of the NFL season is here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is giving new customers a can't-miss offer to celebrate the return of the NFL season. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $200 in free bets instantly. As an added bonus for Week 1, everyone can experience the thrill of DraftKings early win promotion. It's simple. Bet on an NFL team to win, and if your team leads by 10 at any point during the game, you get paid instantly, even if your team loses. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use promo code Foley to get $200 in free bets instantly when you place a $5 bet this Sunday. That's code Foley only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply.
Well, let's talk a little bit about current wrestling, and then we'll move on. There's one more thing that's become a bit of a hot button issue in the last recent few days. Will Ospreay was recognized by the Wrestling Observer as having, I think it's 4 5-star matches in the last month, and a Twitter account pointed that out, that by doing this in the last month, he's amassed more 5-star matches than John Cena, CM Punk, and Kurt Angle combined. And Kevin Nash, as Kevin Nash tends to do on his new great podcast, Click This.
How's his merchandise?
How's his merchandise sales? Which I appreciate that Kevin, as he always does, brings it right back to business.
Yeah.
And I think it does develop a debate amongst a lot of wrestling personalities. Would you rather be a critical success or a financial success? And those are two different goals. And I freestyled to Jeff Jarrett that perhaps, Will Ospreay, his idea of what a wrestler is and his goals and aspirations were to be the best wrestler in the world. Mm-hmm. And perhaps he had a different set of goals or aspirations than Roman Reigns, and maybe neither would feel the same level of satisfaction if their roles were reversed.
Yeah.
And you were a guy who certainly was at the top of the mountain in WWE, but long before that, man, you were putting it all on the line when a lot of people, Arn Anderson included, as you say in your live show, really questioned, hey, what are you doing here? But you were critically acclaimed. And I wonder where you land on that. What's more important in your mind's eye? I know you don't speak for Will and you don't speak for Kevin, but you speak for Mick.
There was a great question. I was really glad to see the support of the Australian and New Zealand wrestlers from the independent community coming out. And I'll say the only interaction I've had with Will was he got in touch with me based on a trip I was supposed to be taking 5 or 6 years ago to New Orleans, where Will and the promoter had some kind of falling out. And then the promoter took to stopping in his car and cutting these long, crazy promos about Will, calling him a spot monkey.
Oh, wow.
So Will was saying that I needed to make it there, despite the misgivings he had about this guy. I needed to go on this tour, and then the tour fell apart and the guy's no longer in business. So that's the only interactions I've had with Will, which were positive. He's phenomenal.
Unbelievable.
Right? It's incredible the stuff that he can do and makes it look effortless. And now he seems to be in a little social media war, Kenny Omega, which could yield incredible results. But I'm going to go back to the question the guy asked me, would I rather be part of a great match or a great storyline? And I said, I think to me, the great matches, they go hand in hand with the great storylines.
Right.
I needed the great storyline. I needed JR to call. I loved having JR call those matches to explain the story to the fans. And of course, he had that amazing job of just saying enough, but putting you in that, putting you in that space where you feel almost like you're in that wrestler's head. So I think the great moments are more important to me than great matches. And I think if you have great matches for too long, too regularly, people stop seeing them as a big deal. That Shawn Michaels excelled almost every night. Kurt Angle excelled almost every night. But if I had one knock on Kurt, throw that out there. Kurt was so great so regularly that people took it for granted.
Yes, I agree.
That he said it wasn't a big deal to see a great Kurt Angle match.
It was expected.
It was expected. So he was almost like a victim of his own greatness. Mm-hmm. And as crazy as it sounds, with the Olympic gold medalist pedigree, and I believe he won an Olympic gold medal. You'd have to ask Kurt. He was also so enjoyable and such a great comic foil that I don't know if everyone realized how outstanding he was. So I haven't watched enough of Will to know exactly what these 5-star matches were, but I would go back and I would have to challenge whether or not anybody has outdone Kurt Angle, and what's the difference between a 4.5-star match and a 5-star match. But I'm not going to pretend that Will's not a phenomenal wrestler.
Yeah, I mean, I think most people, most quote unquote smart fans would think that Will Ospreay is arguably the best wrestler in the world.
Yeah.
But I think maybe what gets lost a lot of times is the entire industry talks about 5-star matches, and I'm a 25-year subscriber to the Observer.
Yeah.
But even I know that's just Dave's opinion.
Yeah.
It's not an objective fact of who drew the most or who sold the most, or that's just a guy's opinion. And that's okay. I value Dave's opinion, or I wouldn't be a 25-year subscriber. But I think Kevin brought it back to, it's not just a critical art form, it's also the wrestling business.
Yeah.
And I guess I want to ask you, would you rather be, as Jay-Z, the rapper, would call it, underpaid or overrated?
I think I was both at once for a while.
Absolutely, you were.
Yeah, I think I was overrated and underpaid.
Underrated. You were underrated.
I was underrated. I don't know. I was underrated up to a point and underpaid. And then I don't think I was ever overpaid, but I do think that at a certain point, I had so much goodwill accrued that people were giving me a pass. Like here, for example, I hurt my back in 2006. It was pretty chronic for 10, 11 years until I had my hip replaced. And I kept getting injured when I would train hard for comeback matches. So in the entirety of the time I was with TNA, I never actually made a comeback.
Right.
Someone missed a move and I hit a double arm DDT and I pulled out the sock because I just didn't have the gas in the tank. So, and I thought, given the circumstances, I did as well as I could while not being in the shape that, that I should have been. Maybe I was using the back as an excuse. I remember my daughter seeing me off when I went to the gym and I was back in 42 minutes. And she said, "Oh, did you forget something?" And I was like, "No." And I said, "I finished the workout." And I didn't even have the guts to tell her I'd actually worked in a trip to the bank too. So the working out was a little briefer than it should have. But I do think I was probably overrated and simultaneously underpaid, if that's possible.
Sure.
All right.
Well, let's jump into why we're here today. We're going back 25 years ago. I've enjoyed revisiting this era, 1997. We've got SummerSlam 97 on deck here. It's the Meadowlands in New Jersey. We're going to talk a lot about that. The first time there's been a major WWE show, especially to this level, in a long time in New Jersey. But it's been a pretty interesting summer on our way here. You become Dude Love on July 14th, which we've covered in the archives.
Yeah.
That same night, you become tag team champions, which is obviously a big deal for you. There's 2 weeks in between then and SummerSlam. So now you find yourself almost as an accidental tag team champion with Stone Cold. You're here as Dude Love, but you're also building towards a steel cage match between yourself, but this time as Mankind, not as Dude Love, against Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And this steel cage is not the one that maybe we're familiar with these days. It's the old unforgiving blue steel.
Yeah.
You saw a lot of that on TV before you ever actually got to work with it. Did it meet or exceed, or how did it meet your expectations?
I heard how brutal those blue cage bars were before I ever got to WWE. And then when you get there, I would say within 2 months of my cell match in '98, WWE transitioned to longer boards underneath the ring, which meant a little more give. Because that, you look at, for example, Bret Hart suplexing Owen, or maybe it was Owen.
The ring doesn't move.
The ring doesn't move. You want a little movement. I had heard that NBC, the head of programming, Lorne Michaels, did not want to see the ring moving on NBC's Saturday night, where WWE came in one night a month and they had those big shows instead of Saturday Night Live, and did these great ratings. But the rings, as per Lorne Michaels' request, they didn't move. And the problem is with a ring that doesn't give, it takes a lot out of the people.
You're saying Lorne Michaels, he ran Saturday Night Live. You mean Dick Ebersol?
Dick Ebersol, that's it. Dick Ebersol. Sorry about that. Dick Ebersol, not Lorne Michaels. Dick Ebersol did not want to see the ring moving, and thus it did not. And this is what the story I heard, and it makes sense. So WWE redid all their rings in the same model, and there was not a lot of give. And then once you have the cage and these screws are in and all that type of thing, that makes a stiff ring even stiffer.
Yes.
But the blue bars allowed you to climb and allowed for some really creative cage matches, and it allowed for some really cool things in terms of timing to be done with the escaping the cage. I know not everybody's a proponent of having a match where the goal is to escape the cage, but it could be so much more dramatic on the blue bars as opposed to just crawling out of a door.
Yes.
Because you could have these great cutoff spots, and for guys who were both creative and athletic and great workers like Owen and Bret, with one of the best cage matches of all time, that could really yield in great results. But you were going to feel it. Oh, you were going to feel it in a way you did not feel the cyclone fencing, meaning the next day. If you took bumps into that thing, there was no way, no way. There was possibly ways to create illusions, but not without some serious physical fallout as well.
It was also probably easier from a production standpoint. There was better visibility.
Oh, you could put the camera right through there.
Right in there.
Sure.
Yeah. Since you brought it up, I do want to ask, you grew up as a traditional wrestling fan. The purpose of the cage was no one in, no one out. There's no escape. And
no. I grew up on the old WWF cage matches, which were always, the goal was to escape.
Okay.
So, the Snuka match has gone down in wrestling lore as being one of the most amazing matches of all time. I'll argue it wasn't the match, it was the moment.
Yes.
Because if you dissect that, probably the truth is, if you dissected a lot of my cage matches, it was an average cage match, but it had the Snuka comeback. You had the grinding. All you needed to have a good cage match back in the day was a good comeback, you babyface raking the heel's face, some blood, and a finish, and you were satisfying almost everybody. Now, on that night that I went to see Snuka in '83, there was a buzz in the air because he had taken off in a losing effort to Backlund, but in, I think, 2 years prior to that, I'm not sure. I think it may have been that exact same day, June 26th or June 28th. I'm sorry, June 26th or June 28th in '82.
Okay.
And then that was the same date, June 28th, that I had the cell match with the Undertaker. So it was just kind of a cool wrestling footnote. But you did not have to be a great cage match worker to create a great moment, because fans, the bar of expectations was pretty low and pretty basic. Is you're there to get revenge. The door was opened creatively. I remember even, Snuka beating down Don Morocco and thinking to myself, why doesn't he just go out the cage? And then you have Pat Patterson going, well, I tell you, Vince, what he thinks and what we think are different. And that made perfect sense to me. Okay, he wants to inflict more damage. So I like the idea of the cage keeping everyone in and keeping the wrestlers inside, keeping outside interference from getting in. But I grew up with the idea that you escape from a cage as being the goal of the cage match.
So let's talk about, where we're coming off of this really hot Raw. You're working in tag matches with Steve Austin against Brett and Owen in Worcester, Mass. And then St. John's, Newfoundland. And then Sydney, Nova Scotia. The WWF is on their Canadian tour.
Yeah.
And I'm curious here, when the Hart Foundation is really hotter than ever here in the summer of 97. And here in America, you're a babyface with the guy who's clearly got the hot hand on the babyface side and Stone Cold. And you're teaming up against maybe the two hottest heels in America. But boy, that is not the case when you go into Canada. What was that like for you to be, hey, I'm a babyface a couple 100 miles from here, but a heel here just because of my opponent? I don't remember that ever happening in wrestling before.
It was really a unique dichotomy that I think we all enjoyed, like a different challenge. I remember the maritime, Canadian maritime audiences that didn't get as much entertainment. They were amazing. I'll say that Newfoundland is up there with the best crowds I've ever wrestled in front of. Wow. Not to downplay Nova Scotia, but far more people hit Halifax than hit St. John's,
right?
Newfoundland. It's way out there. It's as close as you can get in North America to being in Europe, which is why there's still enclaves where you feel like you're walking through Ireland, because there's so many Irish descendants there. They still got the brogue. It was a great, you call them goofy newfies. That was like the ultimate in put downs.
I say,
yeah, with the same guy using every person comes in would put them down with the same thing, goofy newfies. But they were incredible. I remember, it being so much different in Newfoundland when I wrestled with Steve against the Hart Foundation, as opposed to when we came back like a year later. And I believe I teamed up with Steve, and it was against Rock and somebody else. And just the reaction when the Rock had the Stone Cold wrestle buddy laying on the ground, and he kicked the arm and he threw the pad, and he went for that people's elbow, and Steve caught him with the Thez press. Like, it was up there with maybe top 10 reactions I've ever heard anywhere. So those crowds were so great to wrestle in front of, especially when the Hart Foundation was red hot.
And you look back at a match like that wasn't televised. This is just for the house, but it's with Steve Austin, Brett, and Owen Hart. Looking back, man, sometimes you don't know these are the best times of your life until you look back. But I mean, look at who's in that ring. Like, as a fan, you would think, I can't believe that match happened, and I'm lucky enough to watch it. But I can't imagine from your perspective, it's not going to be too much longer, and none of that's going to be possible. Brett's going to be out of here. Mm-hmm. Owen, unfortunately, no longer with us. It was a moment in time, and there were no cameras present. That's pretty awesome.
And I was still trying to get the feel for the Dude Love character, realizing that, well, if Dude is every bit as tough as Mankind or Cactus Jack, there's no need for those characters. And it seemed like we had told that story so well in the interviews with JR that, looking back on it, like, once I became Dude, that to some people was like the end of the journey.
Yes.
So Mankind, I remember working as Mankind at some house shows, and you got the sense that they wanted to see the Dude. Right. The Dude he outlived his usefulness. I always say the Summer of Love was a magical time, right? July and August of 97. But by the time I was told to put 28 minutes in with Jim the Anvil Neidhart trying to think of in Kuwait, is the night before. I guess not much of a crowd, but it was a guaranteed show.
Yeah.
And the night before, it ended a little early, so they wanted a full show. It was like 27 minutes with Jim Neidhart. That's a long time, right?
That's a tough match for anybody.
And by the fifth time I got up on the second turnbuckle and did the Dude dance, like, I realized the Summer of Love was over and that ship had sailed. And of course, Dude would come back in a great incarnation as a heel, but that was like a beautiful 3-4 month run.
When you're in Kuwait and you're doing that, and in your mind's eye, you think, hey, they're not with it anymore. This has gotten old in the same match. Do you wonder or worry, can I go back to Mankind? Will they buy me there? Since they did feel like that was maybe the end of the journey.
Yeah.
Because the way you told the story, that did feel like if this was a movie, we're about to roll the credits.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Well, but now you're still wanting to make a living in the industry. You kind of want to hit rewind a little bit, right?
Well, we found a way to make that transition work. Like I said, this goes back to what we were talking about. And I'm not picking on Will Ospreay at all, right? Because Will, I'm saying, one of the great years. And I would say Moxley's my MVP at this point in the year, just for what his presence on TV has meant, coming back from rehabilitation and willing to go anywhere and work any style. Like that reminds me of like the Harley race, the traveling champions of old. So I would put Moxley up there as my male MVP, Becky Lynch at this point as my female MVP, even if she's not going to probably return before the end of, I don't know, even if she doesn't return before the end of the year. I think what she did on a weekly basis was just so impressive that she gets my nod. Not just because she's a good friend, and who cites me as an inspiration, but because I think she did amazing stuff. But Will Ospreay is doing things that are incredible.
Yes.
But playing off that, when I'm Dude Love, like I said, I realize, okay, if he works exactly like Mankind or Cactus, there's no reason to bring those guys back into the fold. So Dude was listed, Dude became the guy who would rather not get in there and mix it up with even says, Daddy, that's not exactly the Dude's bag. But that's the interview, at Madison Square Garden in September of 97. So in that case, when I made the transition from basically being Dude, interviewing Mankind and coming up with a surprise Cactus Jack, all of a sudden he was the coolest and toughest of the characters. And then a couple months after that, there was I think it was a really good angle. I don't want to say it was great, but it was a way to get Kane that, and put another notch in his belt.
Yes.
Not by defeating Dude Love, because he chokeslammed Dude on the ramp, but we actually dented the ramp, which I was told couldn't be done.
Wow.
But we did. And so when Mankind came back, it was seen as a much more serious threat. And then when Mankind did the honors with emphasis, for Kane, this wasn't a 50-50 match. This was not a destruction, but it was clearly a sizable win for that new character. That really meant something. So I did find a way to make the characters meaningful and to kind of revolve them so they each had their separate face. But that's why the incredibly named Love Handle had to go, because it was the mandible claw with tie-dye on it.
So if you've been listening to this show for a while, you know all about Mick Foley and I talking about the hot tag for your ding dong. Of course, we're talking about BLUECHEW. This episode and all of our episodes are brought to you by BLUECHEW. BLUECHEW has been a day one advertiser here for us on all of our podcasts. We couldn't do what we're doing without BLUECHEW, and we hope by now you've heard about them, but why haven't you tried them? You see, we all know confidence can take you far in life. Well, that goes for the bedroom too. That's where BLUECHEW can come in. It's a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra and Cialis, but this is in chewable form. So if you don't like swallowing pills, well, that's no problem. And oh yeah, it's cheaper too. You can take BLUECHEW's tablets anytime, day or night, so you can plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Now, the process is simple. You'll sign up at BLUECHEW.com. You'll consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, well, you'll receive your prescription within days. And the best part is, man, it's all done online. That means you get to skip the awkward conversations, the waiting in line at the pharmacy, and the doctor's office completely. Now, the BLUECHEW's tablets are made right here in the USA. They're prepared to ship directly to your door, all in a discreet package. And if you could benefit from extra confidence when it's time to perform, BLUECHEW can help. And buddy, we got a special deal for our listeners. Try BLUECHEW free when you use our promo code Foley at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's BLUECHEW.com. The promo code is Foley to receive your first month free. Visit BLUECHEW.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank BLUECHEW for sponsoring the podcast.
Let's talk about what we're doing next here. We've got to keep building the Hart Foundation. You're the tag team champion. The show's in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The main event is yourself, Steve Austin, and the WWF champion Undertaker taking on Bret Hart, Owen Hart, and Davey Boy Smith, now in a flag match. Now, I bring this up because you are maybe an unlikely tag team partner for Steve Austin, but given the long history you've had with The Undertaker, boy, we're really stretching now. It's more about, this America, Canada circumstance more so than what you guys' personal issue was as characters, The Undertaker. What do you think of that creative? He's my lifelong rival, and now we're
without really partners. A story as to why we mended fences.
Just happily here.
I think going back to the controversy that was not a controversy in my mind, which was Undertaker not mentioning me at the Hall of Fame, and then me, saying, "Look, if I'm not hurt by it, don't be hurt on my behalf. This guy did so much for my career." And I even heard a quote where he goes, "Look, I love Mick Foley. I've talked on Blue in the Gills about Mick Foley," which he has. And I think the only thing knock that Undertaker would have is that he was not a dude love guy.
I'll say,
I think it hurt him a little bit on a professional level that the guy he'd done so much for was out there doing this thing. But over time, he really came to appreciate the three different faces. But I remember when the two of us teamed up, I believe in Kuwait or maybe one of those other countries in that region, Dubai or Oman, one of those things, that the main event was The Undertaker and Dude Love, which didn't seem to make a lot of sense.
Right.
But they threw us together, the Americans versus the Canadians, and I'm going to take your word for it that it was a great match.
It was super heated. I think Brian Pillman got involved. He's going to prevent The Undertaker from getting the flag. He helps the Hart Foundation to victory. But I think up to that point, it might have been like a top 5 most heated match in Raw history. Because this, as crazy as it sounds now in hindsight, I mean, that was the genius of Vince McMahon at the time, I suppose. This America-Canada rivalry with the Hart Foundation at the centerpiece, fans were just really with it.
Wow. And that's why we go back to Canadian Stampede as being one of the most, and it was just an In Your House. And who better to talk about In Your House than Mr. In Your House?
Of course.
The number one name in secondary pay-per-views.
This Raw is also well known for the scuffle that Vince McMahon and Bret Hart would get into at ringside. And that's almost something that we never thought we would see.
Right.
An acknowledgement that Vince McMahon was maybe management, much less the owner. And then some physicality. Once upon a time, guys like Gordon Soley and guys who were on the broadcast side, they were untouchable.
Right.
And now you see Vince involved a little bit. This is before he's the Mr. McMahon character, before he's wrestling Stone Cold on Raw. Yeah. Were you surprised to see him put himself in that spot?
We were, because I think the world sees the Montreal Screwjob as the advent of the Mr. McMahon character. But this, like you said, this would be the first time acknowledging, I think, in the open that this guy was more than just an announcer.
Yes.
And I don't know if that was planned, but it worked, right? Bret was a spectacular heel, even though he was cutting babyface promos.
He was.
Talking about the Canadian way of life, where we look up for we look out for the poor, we take care of the ill. And I gave Shawn Michaels the line, where he said he remembered opening up his Canadian toy soldiers on Christmas morning. They all came out of the box like that, which is ridiculous because Canadians have fought very bravely, in many a conflict. But it got really personal. Remember when Shawn put the Canadian flag up his nose?
Oh, yeah.
Man, they almost had to have a police escort.
It's crazy.
And that was a time back in the States when there were like 2 or 3 shows stopped in a row because of fear of rioting, egged on by Shawn, doing a great job as being the heel. But
I think there were riots in Arkansas.
Yeah. In Memphis and Little Rock back to back.
Yes.
Memphis, maybe we came close. Little Rock it got nasty.
We're going to be talking about all of that, including that famous Madison Square Garden match where we see Cactus Jack. But this is where it starts to get interesting, because this is the same night where you're doing this 6-man with Undertaker and Stone Cold, and you're doing it as Dude Love. But then later, you're going to be wrestling on Shotgun Saturday Night against Owen for the IC title as Mankind. And I don't know. I don't think this has happened before in wrestling. Did you find that challenging to try to go back and forth from the two characters? We see you do it at the end of every show now, no problem. But never before was was Kevin Nash a Master Blaster and Diesel and Vinny Vegas and Oz in the same night. And you're going to start doing that.
Well, yes, but I had honed that craft when I was in World Class Championship Wrestling, where for budgetary reasons, when Killer Tim Brooks left, they didn't hire a new heel. They just had me working twice a night. Once as Cactus Jack and once as not Super Executioner. Gorgeous Gary Young and I won the titles as, well, somebody will know this off the top of their head. And we were masked wrestlers. But the deal was I'd broken my wrist against Eric Embry in a scaffold match. So I was going out and losing as not super, it's going to kill me that I'm calling it super, whatever he was. I've got the same burgundy cast up to my wrist. So I lose the match there, and then I come out supposedly with my heat as Cactus Jack with the same distinctive walk. One night, Matt Bourne, in what may have been one of the most embarrassing, and Matt liked to kid around a little bit. So as I shot him off and he had the headlock on me, he kept a real firm grasp and took my mask off in the process. And I come off those ropes and I'm just like, crawled out of the ring, and Bronco Lubitsch hands me the mask and I come back out like, yeah. So I did have a little bit of a little background in working two characters in one night, trying to make the styles different. But at that point, that just the audience accepted that this is something that went on. I would have Chad Patton read a note, saying, I have a note from Dude Love. And he would go, ow, have mercy. Let me tell you something, Daddy. The dude is, the dude. And Owen would help me write these promos. But this is not exactly the dude's bag, but he knows somebody whose bag it indeed is. And then they'd introduce Mankind as the replacement, and the place would go, to quote Pat Patterson, banana singular. So it was a fun time.
Do you think it could work again? I ask because I heard recently Road Dogg say on his great podcast, Oh, You Didn't Know, that he once pitched Sami Zayn as wrestling as Sami Zayn on Friday, but being El Generico on Monday. And Vince, back in the day, I guess, shot it down.
Sami could.
He could have pulled that off.
I'm going to stand on my explanation that everything Sami and Kevin Owens do turns to gold.
Yes.
So if he was given that opportunity, I know he could pull it off.
So the Go Home Raw for SummerSlam is in Pittsburgh on July 28th. Little do we know, 11 months later to the day, you're going to set all kinds of history in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It features you on the show twice. You team with Steve Austin as Dude Love to take on the Godwinns. It goes to a count out because Owen interferes. And then later, you find yourself in a cameraman outfit, and you're going to attack Hunter Hearst Helmsley before his match against Vader. Chyna's going to make the save. You and Hunter are brawling in the stands, but you're dressed as a cameraman. I loved that. Thought it was super creative. Is that a Vince Russo idea?
I wish I could tell you. I don't think it was the first time that it had been done either. I think there'd been a few.
Well, I loved it.
Yeah, thanks. I don't think it was the first. I'd be happy to find out that it was, that other people emulated that. But I think it was a case of us copying an idea that had already worked. It is a great idea. You know, you're there and you got the camera covering up and you're sneaking out under the cover of darkness. Your heartbeat is, quick because of the adrenaline. And then you have to make that happen. It's nerve-wracking, but it's really rewarding. So I don't know if it was Vince Russo. Vince Russo had some great creative ideas, and a lot of the things that did work for my character were Russo initiatives, but I can't tell you for a fact whose that was.
Talk to me about brawling in the stands. We see most of the action happen between the confines of the squared circle, but every now and again, the story or the match will call for you guys to brawl amongst the fans.
Yeah.
And that feels like that's a tough spot because you're trying to serve two masters. You're trying to make it look good, but also not hurt anyone because, families are there and you don't want to bump into someone. And I know that that's probably not the first thing you think about as a performer, but I'm sure the company's thinking about it. What's the magic, or what are the rules of thumb of brawling through the crowd?
Well, I remember going on my first tour for All Japan in 1991, and I thought, based on Brody, running out as Hansen, there were 4 or 5 of the monster heels did that. In Japan, brawled among the audience, and audience members knew if they got in the way, they would get hit. So that made those arrivals seem much more authentic. And I'll say that, given all the pyro in the world, nothing is dramatic to me as a Bruiser Brody entrance in All Japan, especially when they had the Zeppelin song, Valhalla.
Sure.
After a while, they had to go to a generic version of Valhalla, so it wasn't quite as good. Still, the idea that if you were in the way, you were going to get hit. But I found out about 2 weeks into my tour, the guy who did the translations, I can't remember his name, came over and said, Cactus on, maybe, I don't want to, he sounds, but you don't want to belittle the guy's English far better than my Japanese. But he said I was hurting fans.
Wow.
So I had to stop. So I was like, well, I'll take the bump that maybe was best done when Steve Williams whipped me over the guardrail. And I did a alteration on it with Paul Orndorff that gets a lot of numbers.
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, anytime goes up. But those type of bumps could wipe out a couple rows of chairs and could take out innocent bystanders. So I had to be careful not to hurt people. I was always cognizant of that, to the point where I got in a shouting match with Sandman after a match in Middletown because I didn't think he was showing enough concern for the welfare of the people out there. So you have to look like you don't care about their health while obviously not wanting to hurt anybody out there. I liked it. I liked brawling in the crowd. When WWE had Jim Dotson as head of security, and then everywhere after that, you felt safe. Like you felt like you were going to be protected. So I liked it. I liked the realism it brought, and then you drop in any one of a standard wrestling move, backdrop, back body drop, suplex, and you do it outside on the floor, and it just brought a feeling of realism to it.
Absolutely. So the Godwinns, we haven't talked about them much on the show. Kind of the unsung heroes of the tag division for the middle of the WWF in the 90s. But I mean, they were there for a long time, and for whatever reason, Vince loves the hillbilly characters. He's had them forever and ever. What were those guys like in real life? Did you enjoy working with them?
I did. I liked both those guys, Mark Canterbury and Dennis Knight, and really enjoyed them when they were the Tex Slazenger and
Shanghai Pierce.
Yeah, Shanghai Pierce, right? Good guys. And there's a photo I posted a few months ago, probably back in February, of my son's Dewey's first birthday party. And the wrestling contingent that was there was Ravishing Rick Rude. Always surprised people that Rick and I were such good friends.
Yeah.
Ravishing Rick Rude, Van Hammer, which also surprised people, and Shanghai and Tex. Like, I really liked those guys to the point where I brought Tex over to Japan with me when they needed like another like killer American. So they brought him over as Tarzan Goto's brother-in-law. And I remember Phineas or Dennis saying like, yeah, I said to the crowd, I'm his brother-in-law. One of the magazine guys goes, I know, I gave them the idea. So you're trying to be kayfabe, but over there, the writers had a say, like those type of things. But I liked it. They were both real solid guys. Phineas, Henry, Mark Canterbury worked a real physical, old school heel style, and Shanghai or Dennis Knight reminds me of when I was, getting a little bit of a push in WCW. In 1990, that he said, can I take one of your bumps? I said, what do you have in mind? And so he was a big guy, 6'6", he was around 270. And I gave him the slingshot, and he took the bump over the top rope to the outside, which was a heck of a bump for that time period. If you do it right, it's still a heck of a bump. So I like those guys. I was never a fan of the names that were puns, or the names that spelled out. Hog, Henry O. Godwin, Phineas I. Godwin, Hog and Pig. With that being said, I was not a fan of Decatur, Illinois, either, with the drill, Isaac Yankum, like the plays on words. Not that a few of them didn't work here and there, but I did enjoy working with those guys.
The premium live events, as they're now called, are not like they were back then, but this is the first show in New Jersey in almost 10 years. So there's a lot of hype around it, a lot of media. They're even going to have the governor there.
And this goes back probably to when Vince did not want to pay the
taxes. Yes.
And that had a lot to do with Vince.
The Athletic Commission versus this is sports entertainment.
Sports entertainment.
Yeah.
And that was thought to be, it's going to be the death knell for professional wrestling. And now you look back and see how fortunate we were to have portrayed it as sports entertainment. Otherwise, I believe we would have just been rolled by UFC once people saw, you can't do an Irish whip in combat. This is what it is. But we had already, I think by Vince making that declaration, which I hated, right? Because I wanted to bring realism into my matches, and I wanted people to have that reaction that I love to have, which is, okay, maybe the rest of that wrestling is this, but this is different. Like you still want you were still able to do that from time to time, but by declaring it sports entertainment over the next few years, what it allowed fans to do was accept it for what it was instead of knocking it for what it wasn't. So in the old days, you'd get that, hey, is that wrestling phony? You get it all the time. And that stopped being the comment to the point where when you did get it every once in a while, it just seemed ridiculous that somebody was still coming at you with that vantage point, especially when I went to India and they all wanted to know, like, is wrestling real? You're like, you guys worship the great Khali. Have you seen his body of work? Like, This is an expo. I hope the big guy's not listening, but it was pretty much an expose. And this is even before he got into the snake charming contest with Santino.
As you're listening to this, I'm already in Chicago, and guess what else is in Chicago? My CHILISLEEP. I travel with it everywhere I go. I just sleep better, and you will too. You'll feel better. CHILISLEEP has made such a difference in my life. I really can't recommend it enough. I thought growing up in the South, man, as long as I had a ceiling fan and cranked that AC down, I was good to go. Well, turns out what I really needed was like a smart thermostat for my bed, but I didn't think that existed. It does, and it's called CHILISLEEP. CHILISLEEP makes the Uller and the Cube sleep system. Either way, we're talking hydro-power, temperature-controlled mattress toppers. Let me explain. This fits over your existing mattress, but it provides you your ideal sleep temperature. And ideal means what it says. My wife likes to sleep a little warmer than I do. Her side of the bed is warmer, thanks to CHILISLEEP. My side of the bed is cooler, thanks to CHILISLEEP. You see, these luxury mattress pads keep your bed at the perfect temperature for deep sleep, whether you sleep hot or cold. CHILISLEEP is designed to help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and give you the confidence and energy to power through your day. Really think about this. Can you even imagine waking up and not feeling tired? Well, CHILISLEEP can make that happen. Head over right now to chilisleep.com/Foley to learn more and save 30% off the purchase of any new Cube or Uller sleep system. The offer is available exclusively for Mick Foley listeners and only for a limited time. That's CHILI sleep.com/Foley to take advantage of our exclusive discount and wake up feeling refreshed every day.
This is obviously a big show, SummerSlam 97. It's got gimmicks all over the place. We're definitely getting more into the Vince Russo era. You and Hunter are going to open the show in a cage.
Right.
Then Goldust and Brian Pillman are going to wrestle. And the stakes are, if Pillman loses, he has to wear a dress.
Which he did, right?
Yes.
And he wore the dress and wore it well, from what I remember.
He looked phenomenal.
Yeah.
Davey Boy is going to have to eat dog food if he loses to Ken Shamrock. Steve Austin will have to kiss Owen Hart's ass if he loses the Intercontinental title. And Bret Hart won't wrestle in America again if he loses to The Undertaker in the world title match. I understand that Eric Bischoff is a big proponent of stakes, but maybe Vince Russo has too many here.
Maybe. Well, remember, anything Vince Russo suggests has to be passed by
the ultimate filter, as they call it.
Vince.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, there was some frustration in that we felt like we finally had the better show, and it wasn't yet yielding that vantage point in the ratings.
Right.
We were still getting beaten every week, and we would for the next 30 or 35 weeks into the 83-week run of WCW on top of the ratings. So I think there was a little bit of frustration, and also the sense that SummerSlam is securely in 1997 the number 2 show. I'll argue that I think Royal Rumble is bigger than SummerSlam now, and it's become like a destination,
yes.
for parties and
yes.
the WrestleMania. What are they get a little bit of gambling. What's the word I'm looking for? Not an auction.
Well, they do prop bets and stuff.
And we love doing that. And I think it's one of the most fun matches. It can be depending on the finish. You know, I remember taking my kids to see Royal Rumble in Philadelphia because there was.
Oh, you're thinking of squares. That's what people do. They do Royal Rumble squares.
Yeah. I don't want to jump out, but just indulge me here. There was a big blizzard in Philadelphia, so I thought I'll drive. I've got more experience than my oldest son driving the blizzard. And so I was basically dropping them off at the First Union Center, or whatever the name was at the time, in Philadelphia. And then when I came back to pick them up, I didn't have to know how it ended to know it did not end well, because I just saw people with their head down. Nobody had that vibrant feeling of joy that I talked about in the post Ric Flair's last match backstage area. It seemed like a depressing night because we didn't give the people what they wanted at that time. But the Royal Rumble, I think, usually does leave people feeling good, and it's the anticipation of it is always.
And isn't it crazy too? I think the Royal Rumble you're talking about is when Roman won it, and Rock is there to anoint him.
Yeah,
and now here we are saying, man, how magical will that be as a WrestleMania match? Just a handful of years later,
sure,
really.
Yeah, and if that was the plan all along, kudos to Mr. McMahon.
Stay in the course.
Stay in the course. Yeah, saw something in him, and now it's like, well, I was a Roman believer, and I got a lot of flack for sticking up for Roman at a time when that's not what a lot of people want to see.
Yeah,
and then he was able to turn what was not a perfect babyface into just one of the great heel depictions of the last 10 years at least.
Thank you, Paul Heyman.
Yeah, Paul Heyman.
Big proponent of that. So let's talk about SummerSlam here and what big business it is. You've got 20,213 fans there, so probably one of the biggest crowds you've wrestled in front of at this point.
Before things really got rolling in '98 to where we were selling out almost every night, sometimes before the card was even announced, this would have been a giant crowd.
17,361 fans paid an incredible $523,154 and over $202,000 in merch.
Wow.
In 1997, that's a huge house. It's a big house now.
Yeah.
But back then, woof.
Imagine if they had Mr. In Your House shirts at that time.
Flying off the shelves. By the way, you can pick that up over at adfreecares.com. And don't forget, we donate 100% of the proceeds to St. Jude Children's Hospital.
While we're talking proceeds, just in the interest of doing the right thing, I know we're going to talk about it at the end. But in case listeners aren't here or viewers for the full course,
sure,
we're really excited. I'm really excited to be taking part in this
tomorrow.
The money for Mongo. It just so happens it works out great for me because I'm only about 90 minutes south of Chicago filming a show for WWE. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about it, but it's breaking news. One of the hosts of the new season of Most Wanted Treasures. And really enjoying that. So when you told me about this event we were having for Mongo, I said, hey, I'm only an hour and a half away. I didn't know Steve, but Deborah, his ex-wife, was my assistant. And I was a huge Bears fan during those years, during the struggling years, the early 70s, all the way through, to this day, they're still the team I pull for. But I was so excited that they were finally good. And, that Super Bowl shuffle year was amazing. So Deborah was surprised when I told her what a big fan I was, and then backed it up by reeling off probably 10, 11 names off the top of my head.
Wow.
And so that was a special time. And people who know Steve just rave about what a great guy he was. And even his indomitable spirit when he was diagnosed with ALS, like he was still funny. He was talking about, it's almost impossible to fight this thing. It's one of the most devastating illnesses out there. And anyone who's seen Steve, recently seen photos, it's jarring.
Yes.
But I think it's really instrumental to know to see him, to understand how devastating this disease is. No matter if you have good insurance or not, costs are going to build up. And so we're trying to offset those costs by.
It's a 5-figure deficit a month.
Yeah.
Every single month that insurance and the NFL doesn't cover. And so every little bit helps. We encourage you to go right now to moneyformongo.com, make a donation, and by all means, please give as much as you can.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is we're getting together a super podcast show. Mick Foley will be in the ring. Our stage will be a wrestling ring with the ropes taken down with Eric Bischoff, Tony Schiavone, Jim Ross, Jeff Jarrett, Ric Flair. I mean, this is a who's who of professional wrestling podcasts all together, all pulling for Mongo. So go check it out. Moneyformongo.com. The show is free. You can watch it on Fight, YouTube, anywhere else. We just encourage you to make a donation at moneyformongo.com.
And if you're not able or position where you can, retweet, shares, all that stuff is really helpful.
Absolutely. Every little bit helps. Moneyformongo.com. And by the way, I want to mention it goes directly to Mr. and Mrs. McMichael. It doesn't go through any other hands.
Yeah.
It goes directly to them.
And research is invaluable.
Yes.
But in this case, we're looking to make the days and months, however much time Steve has had, we're trying to make it as comfortable as possible for him.
For him and his family.
Yeah.
It feels silly to even talk about wrestling after talking about Mongo, but I'm glad you put us on the right track there and reminded us what we're doing tomorrow. SummerSlam sells out a week in advance. The show is going to break all kinds of pro wrestling in records in 3 categories. It's the former Meadowlands Arena, and those records were probably in place from SummerSlam 89, which had Hulk Hogan and Brutus Beefcake on top, taking on Zeus and Randy Savage. This beats that. It's also the second largest of the entire year, trailing only WrestleMania in Chicago. So when you think about that, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
To be right behind WrestleMania. And when it came to the actual match, you guys got plenty of time, 16 minutes and 25 seconds. And Meltzer would say that Helmsley tried to run away and escape immediately, thus pointing out the flaws of WWF cage match rules. So Meltzer, not a big fan of this version of the cage match,
right,
but you grew up on it.
Right.
Could you see both sides, or do you still prefer?
I can, because like I acknowledged earlier, it seemed strange that you could win a match by escaping, especially when there were so many points where it looks like somebody could. I'm thinking that Dave grew up with the Cow Palace, their cage matches, which would have been different. So I think it's just according to what you grew up on. But I thought that, like we talked about earlier, the blue bars and the creativity afforded allowed some really dramatic moments, especially in an era in the current era, where false finishes they're a dime a dozen. And it's really hard to have a great match in most fans' eyes unless you do a bunch of cool moves and a bunch of really great false finishes. So the escape allows you to do false finishes without pinfalls.
Right.
And it could be really well done or not so well done. And I thought, I don't pretend to be as good a cage match wrestler, or I don't pretend that the match that Hunter and I had was as good as Brett and Owen or a few of the other classics. But I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Well, you've kind of always been down on yourself on cage matches. You even wrote in your book, quote, "As a general rule, I tend to suck big time inside a cage, but this match was memorable." Why do you think why would you say as a general rule?
I think I was being too hard on myself there. I think it's a general rule. I was a very average cage match wrestler, especially as the bar got higher and you couldn't get away with just the rake and a little bit of blood. So I think I was an average cage match wrestler, especially in the blue bars, when I had the creativity part of it, but physically, I just couldn't do some of those things that some of the other guys could to make the cage matches memorable.
Meltzer's criticism of this match is that, quote, "Chyna is the only thing in Helmsley's repertoire that the crowd seems to care about, so her constant interference is something of an easy out." And he would even say the cage didn't prevent outside interference, which is kind of the whole gimmick of a cage. Is Meltzer getting too inside baseball there? Is it just supposed to be entertainment? Because it was entertaining.
Yeah, I feel like, and I have not, to this point, disagreed with too much he said. He said the first match with Eddie Gilbert was disappointing, which it was. But in this case, I think maybe so, because I tend to be very realistic and maybe even a little too tough on myself when it comes to matches. But this is one I really enjoyed. And going back to the great moments versus great matches argument, I think we had a great moment. And that this victory really helped me out, or Hunter
Sure.
doing the favor. And what was a really good match, staying put for what must have been a harrowing elbow off not the top, but the second rung from the top, because I realized as I was scaling that cage that I couldn't actually perch on the top. So it was not as dramatic.
Your plan was to perch on the top?
Oh, yeah. And just to show you, not everything was in order. When it comes time to tear off the Mankind shirt and reveal the heart-shaped tattoo underneath it, which was the Dude Love hallmark, that I completely forgot until practically my music's playing. And then I think I don't know who I had to draw the heart there. I don't want to say heart on because it's an easy out, right? It's a cheap pop. And you guys out there are too good for that. But it was marked on my body so quickly, it didn't have time to set. So now I get up to that top. And I think I even cover this in the new Rivals episode with A&E. Well, I haven't seen the show yet. I hear it's really good. But when I tore off the Mankind shirt to reveal that tattoo underneath, what I was really revealing was just a blob of messy colors that had run down my chest. Like there didn't seem to be a point to the casual observer as to why I was tearing off my shirt, what I was trying to reveal. But it was supposed to be the heart-shaped tattoo that, that had been with the dude since 85.
So you get the mandible claw on in 3 minutes, and Meltzer would say Chyna broke it by choking him with a chain through the cage. She then gave the chain to Helmsley, who used it. Mankind makes a comeback and was climbing out, but Chyna gives him a crotch shot. Then in the first spectacular spot of the match, Helmsley gives Mankind a superplex off the very top of the 8-foot cage. It wasn't as spectacular as when Hogan and Bossman did the exact same spot in their series of cage matches in early '89, but who else has ever even tried a spot like that? And again, as you pointed out, this is before the rings changed.
Yeah.
Scale of 1 to 10, how bad did that suck?
You're going to be feeling that for a few days. And then I think I took a back body drop into the bars. And then I think we'll get to Joni slamming the cage on my head. I was really sore, hurting for several days after that.
Is it your idea to have the superplex off the top, or does somebody say, what if?
I don't remember that. It sounds like a Hunter call asking if I thought I was physically up to it. So that's a case where I could never. That's lets me do a super. I later took one from Kurt Angle in TNA, but otherwise I took one from Johnny Smith in All Japan. But even then, it was like I was kind of shaky as far as just being on that top rope. I was never felt at home there, and wish in retrospect I'd spent a lot more time working on becoming comfortable up there.
Is that a spot do you remember a guy coming and pitching something to you where you turned it down?
Only if I thought I physically couldn't pull it off,
Okay.
And that doesn't, and I did, nobody came to me with ridiculously dangerous spots. I was usually the one coming to them with spots for me. And that sometimes they'd be ixnayed by the kind-heartedness of my opponent that night, or even going back to what Jerry Briscoe told me the first day of my debut. Like, we know you do a lot of wild things. There may come a time when we ask you to do that, but please don't do it until you're asked. So as wild and as physical as the Mankind style was, like, I did have some gas in the tank. I'd say probably the Hell in a Cell was a turning point where I no longer believed in my own mortality. But before that, I was pretty adamant about getting in those, like, I'd say mid to high level bumps without the outrageous bumps, which is we kept them to not to a minimum, but we kept them kind of well regulated.
Meltzer would write, Helmsley then had the opportunity to win, but quote unquote changed his mind and stayed in the cage to constantly slam Mankind's head into the cage. As he tried to escape again, Mankind stopped him on the way over, holding his hair and leg. They were up there again with Mankind holding Helmsley by the ankle when Chyna climbed up and gave Mankind a forearm to break it up. Helmsley later backdropped Mankind into the cage, and Meltzer would say the heat was disappointing for all this. Do you remember being in that match and feeling like you had the fans and you started to lose them?
No, I don't. And I do recall instances where I felt, oh no, we're losing them. Oh no, why can't we get them? So my recollection might be different. So I don't particularly want to go back and watch it and be disproven.
Sure.
But my feeling was that it was that people enjoyed it, and that might just be because they loved the ending. But a really good ending can make everything you've done in the match seem that much better to all but a select few. And Dave might be one of those select fews because he's watched more wrestling than anybody. Maybe corny, maybe there's a handful of Americans out there who've seen more wrestling, and he can be a pretty tough taskmaster when it comes to those. Not to be confused with Shockmaster.
Or that's a different thing.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
From your book, you wrote, we went at it at a good pace for several minutes before Triple H took over. At one point, he rammed my head 10 unanswered times into the blue steel bars. Even though I tried to absorb the impact with my shoulder and chest, I could feel my noggin bounce against the steel about half the time and woke up the next morning with the lumps to prove it. Unfortunately, that would be far from my worst pain of the night. Now, we'll talk about the worst pain of the night, but we talked about this cage at the top of the show. This is not a typical cage. This is solid steel.
Yeah.
And there's only so much you can do with your shoulder and chest.
Because you're trying to make that impact.
You need a sound, you need a look,
yeah,
you need a visual.
and you have to, unless you're willing to thunk your head off, which nobody advocates, you try to make the contact, you try to make it happen at the exact same time, but there's very little margin for error. You don't really want to be the guy who's clearly blocking. Yes. And that's I think you would err on the side of safety. But at that time, I wanted these landings to be as flush as possible, and I was making more contact than I hoped about half the time.
Here it comes. The two were standing on the top rope trading blows when Helmsley lost his balance and crotched himself, then landed with his ankle tied up in the ropes. Mankind then tried to leave, but Chyna slammed the door on his head. And Meltzer would say, Terry Gordy built an entire lucrative territory around this spot in 82, and now it's a false finish of every cage match.
You could say the same thing about a suplex, though.
Yes.
But at the time, 97, I don't think it was a false finish in every cage match. And I would say Joni did it harder and more realistically. I remember Kane's head getting split open like a ripe cantaloupe with the same spot. So it is something that's done. And in those blue bars, that could be really perilous. So the tell on that one is she hit me so hard in the head that I immediately grabbed my shoulder because of that stinger you get.
Oh, wow.
So the pinched nerve went right down to my fingers. So that's, something hurts, because even though on a very real level, I'm supposed to be selling my head, I had to grab my shoulder because it was in so much pain. And that's me, wanting it to look as good as possible. Maybe to the point of overkill, because I think it was really out there another 3-4 inches. And I think I just wanted to ensure it looked really good, and I believe it did.
So you don't have any ill will or hurt feelings towards Chyna. You willingly put your head out there too far.
I did. And I think it should be said, I remember when WWE covered this match in one of their shows, that Joni talked about how she was supposed to give me a low blow, but I had actually ascended a little too far. And you can see her kind of like wondering what to do, because the low blow is now going to come up and it's not going to look as good. So she essentially lined up and punched me in the ass. So
yes, an ass punch.
Yeah, you can look for the ass punch, not delivered.
Which should be a finish today.
Should be a finish. Yeah, these kids today, they don't sell the ass punch.
Yeah, stop slapping the leg, punch the ass. So you wrote
Ox Baker, it could have worked the ass punch.
Yeah,
like you did the heart punch.
But let's stretch them out after, So from your book, you wrote, victory was in my grasp. All I had to do was get through the door and touch the floor to be the winner. And this type of cage match, blah, 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 blah. At 200 muscled pounds, Joni Lauer was as strong as many of the men in the Federation, and actually stronger than the guy whose book you're reading. When she came to the company, many of the men had been hesitant to let a woman show them up, whereas the former Intercontinental Champion Ahmed Johnson had put so eloquently, ain't gonna let no bitch hit me. Apparently, I was a little more secure in my manhood, and as a result, had been power slammed, punched, kicked, suplexed, and ball shot by the ninth wonder of the world. None of that, however, could have prepared me for the pain I was about to feel. As I stuck my head through the bars, Chyna made her move. If anyone was at fault for what happened next, I was, because I made my head such a wide open target. Chyna was merely swinging the door as hard as she could, which is how I knew she insisted, or how she knew I insisted things on being done. Maybe I should have tried what many believe is the whole idea behind wrestling anyway, faking it. Because the pain that I felt when Chyna slammed the heavy steel door on my head was unbearable. I know that I mentioned earlier my torn abdominal muscle as my most painful injury, but this one was close. It hurt so bad that I didn't even hold my head, I held my shoulder. Pain was shooting all the way down my arm, and I lay still for several moments. At first, I thought there was no way I could continue, and then I sadly realized this was SummerSlam, and I still had one big move left in me. This is tough to watch. It was tough to watch even in 97. I just knew, as you alluded to earlier, okay, all right, now that's wrestling, and that's part of the show. Oh, but now this was real.
Yeah.
And there's no way to, quote unquote, work what I saw. This was a real, for lack of a better word, head injury.
Yeah.
If you had it to do over again, would you do it? Yeah.
If I had to do it over again, I probably would have more correctly gauged where the door met the cage, and I probably would have thrown the hand up last second.
Back then, do you even try to walk through something? Not full speed.
No, I only believe it or not, I only rehearsed one move in my 4 full-time years with WWE, and that was just so I could determine that I could do the table spot with Shawn Michaels at Mind Games without hurting him. And so we got out there. We didn't take the bump, but I lifted him up, and I realized, okay, we can do this, you know. So I would not have. I did have a good idea of what I wanted to do in my head. And back in those days, you would walk around ringside and come up with ideas and trade ideas, and then it comes a kind of a powwow session where there are sometimes you're trying to get your point across. But I never had that issue with Hunter. Like, we were almost always on the same page, and we wanted that spot to look good.
It's worth mentioning this same spot is going to happen 1 month later to Ric Flair on a WCW pay-per-view. This is August of 97, September of 97.
Am I allowed to say powwow session anymore?
Why not? Is that against the rules now?
Might be seen as being insensitive.
I didn't know that.
I don't know. Put it out there.
We'll look it up.
Okay.
And by the time we record next week, we'll know.
And we will have a more proper.
And we'll either decide we're using it or it's got to go. Let us know in the comments and we'll act accordingly, I guess.
Let me give you a peek behind the curtain. My wife is a bit of a health nut. She wakes up every day at 4:45. She has a regiment. She's been sticking to it for as long as I can remember. And she starts every single day with AG1. Eventually she got me to try it, but she knew I didn't like swallowing pills. I don't like taking vitamins. And if I'm going to do it, it needs to taste great. She convinced me to do it during the pandemic because she wanted to optimize our immune system, and she did it for better gut health. I've enjoyed better energy. What we're talking about is AG1 from Athletic Greens. Now, what exactly is this stuff? Well, let me explain. With one delicious scoop of AG1, you're absorbing 75 high quality vitamins, minerals, whole food sourced ingredients, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, your focus, your aging, all your things. I've been doing it for a while and I'm feeling better than ever. And let me tell you, our friend Dallas, he loves it too because it's lifestyle friendly. Whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, gluten-free, it contains less than 1 gram of sugar. There's no GMOs. There's no nasty chemicals. There's no artificial anything. And buddy, it still tastes good. You're going to enjoy better sleep quality, better recovery, better mental clarity, better alertness. It's done all of that for me and for less than $3 a day. I almost look at it, and my wife does too, it's almost like an all-in-one nutritional insurance. Now don't take our word for it. Go check it out. Athletic Greens has over 7,000 5-star reviews. They've been recommended by professional athletes. They've been recommended by everybody I know. Seriously, Eric Bischoff does this every single day. So does Ric Flair. So does Jeff Jarrett. So will you. Right now, it's time to reclaim your health and arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition. It's just 1 scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. So to make it easy, Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of immune supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/Foley. Again, that's athleticgreens.com/Foley to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance.
When you saw that Ric Flair did it the next month, WCW did it the next month. I mean, I know that, you know, maybe the most famous version of this is the Terry Gordy one. Was it overdone? Does it lose its value when somebody does it the very next month?
Next month, well, you're looking at what, maybe a quarter of the people who watched that match had seen SummerSlam. And by no means was I like we said, the first to do it. And then I think Rick taking it is going to have a completely different feeling than me taking it, to the point where who was he with that day? You know, that match
with Flair?
Yeah.
It was the NWO versus the Four Horsemen. Kurt Hennig had turned. He had teased that he was going to be a horseman, and then he revealed that he wasn't actually injured. He was with the NWO. They handcuffed the other horseman, and then Kurt threatens to slam the door on Flair's head unless Mongo will submit. Mongo says, "Okay, fine, don't do it. We submit, we give up," and they still slam the door anyway. But they did it because Flair was having a facelift done. So he was going to be gone for 2 months.
Really? So
that way they could show footage on Nitro of his reconstructive surgery.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I think it has a completely different feel.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to bet if you watch two cells, they were completely different.
Yes.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Rick probably didn't grab his shoulder and lie motionless.
No.
So, yeah, no, I think there's room for 2 cage matches in 2 months with the same door spot.
Well, your rough night is not over. The Observer would say, Chyna then attacked the ref and smashed his head into the steps and threw a chair over the cage. Helmsley goes for the pedigree on the chair, but Mankind reverses it, turns it into a slingshot, sending Helmsley into Chyna, who was on the other side of the cage. She gets nailed and then takes a bump to the floor. Mankind then uses the double arm DDT on the chair, and the place begins chanting Superfly. The rumor had gotten out that Mankind was going to do the Jimmy Snuka splash off the top of the cage from that famous Don Morocco match in 1983. So it's interesting that the crowd, maybe at first, and again, remember, this is the opening match.
Yeah.
So typically the crowd's going to be pretty hot for that one. It's a cage match. It's a guy they've fallen in love with, and they're kind of quiet for the first part, but boy, they really get with it and start chanting for this big Superfly moment. That's pretty amazing.
Well, going back to what I was saying about there being a buzz in the air about Superfly in October of '83, based on him taking flight against Backlund a year or two earlier, I think there was a similar buzz in the expectation, the hope. So therefore, it's going to cushion the responses up until you reach that point. And I had the same issue with the cell match. This is another way. This is like my way of saying I went in after performing to a Symphony of Silence and saying, brother, we had that silent heat out there, which everybody's used at a certain point to dismiss the lack of response. But I do remember in that cell match with Hunter in February of 2000 being surprised that what we were doing was not meriting a better response. Especially as the false finishes go. And then once we got outside and that place came alive, it was like, oh, that's right. I guaranteed them I was going to go on top of the cell tonight. So you can be your own worst enemy when you predict something like that, because you're preconditioning fans not to respond as readily until you get to the moment you promised them, in this case, at least implied was going to happen. So
we've been reading where Meltzer's kind of critical of the outside interference of Chyna. Well, not kind of, he is. But when you do the slingshot spot and Hunter collides with her and then she takes the bump to the floor, huge pop.
And now the place comes alive.
You called it Road Warrior-esque in your book. And, for all the criticism there is about too much interference, blah, 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 that crowd response tells the story.
Yeah. And I think you don't want to say the ends always justifies the means, but in this case, I think it did. That, the pop was enormous when Joni went down, and now we have the feeling that Hunter's going to get what he has coming to him. Hunter took the best slingshot in the business, as far as I was concerned. And I know I always was a big believer in getting him up there and getting his, glutes on my knees, because then when I drop down, it really does give you a springboard and takes a move that you will never see in UFC.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
They're cooperating.
John Bon Jones with a springboard into the. So
then a monkey flip too.
Right? Hunter did a great job of taking that, and there's a creative way of getting back at Joni without actually inflicting physical. You had to tiptoe around that. We would get to a point in the Attitude Era when men were just lambasting the women, which I wasn't big on, although I may have participated, but I think with the creative spots.
This just looks like, it's a foiled moment more than physical violence. So Meltzer would write, Mankind climbed over the cage to a slight groan to those who expected that finish, then paused before hitting the bottom, climbed back up, threw his mask off, and Chyna at this point ran in the ring to attempt to pull Helmsley out, but Helmsley had to tell her she was early and she left. Do you remember that?
No, I may have blocked that one out. And what Dave's forgetting, really important here, is my Naven Johnson moment for anyone who's seen Steve Martin in The Jerk. When Naven hears the music and he realizes he's got it in him, his feet start twitching. So that's what I was aiming for, to imitate Naven Johnson in The Jerk when the Dude Love music started to hit and that foot started to go. So that may have been lost on some people, but that was the inspiration. Dude Love music plays, I believe it did. And then I make that slow ascent up to the top while realizing with each rung I go that I don't know how to balance on the top of those bars. So
I love that's not even something we think about till we're there.
There's a big difference between he's on top of that cage and he is one rung away from being on top.
He's almost at the top.
Almost at the top, yeah.
Mankind would say, or the Observer would say, Mankind opened his shirt, climbed to the next to highest rung of the cage, so he technically didn't come off the top and dropped an elbow. Then he climbed out, Chyna ran back in, and Chyna frantically tried to drag Helmsley out, but Mankind climbed over, winning the photo finish and collapsed to the floor. Mankind laid on the floor until they played the Dude
there we go. There we go. Okay.
Which revived him, and he got up and started doing the strut to the back.
All right.
The match had its high spots and memorable spots, and in hindsight was very well laid out. But something was missing from the body of the match, and it just wasn't the crowd heat. 2.5 stars.
What? We didn't even get 3 out of that?
No.
Come on.
That's a shame.
You
had more lumps on your head than you had stars.
That's incredible, right? I think, something stands the test of time, and I believe, like I said, we created a great moment. I don't want to go back through there and be disproven, but I thought that certainly felt like a 3-star match.
I really enjoyed the match. You even write in your book, when I got to the top, the sound was louder than anything I'd ever been a part of.
There you go.
I tore my shirt open to reveal my old Dude Love Red Heart tattoo, flashed the Jimmy Snuka I love you sign, and sailed majestically into the New Jersey arena air. Wham! I landed hard on Hunter with an impact that jolted both of our bodies. It was at that point the single greatest moment in my career.
So, and that's me 12 years in. So I think, again, when I say the end justifies the means, if we had torn down the house in 5-star fashion, which I'm not capable of doing, I don't think people will remember it as fondly. So I think what we did, what needed to be done to have a great, leave a mark on people's consciousness.
I'm curious, if you go back and you think about all the big moments in your career.
Have you seen me this defensive about a match before?
No. But I could tell even, just the way you wrote, this is the most.
Because the fact that I spent a long time writing about that match meant it was important to me. And there were some matches, I'll even say a couple of ECW matches against Terry Funk where I don't remember a single thing about them, not because of head injuries, but just because they've kind of become blurred. You tend to hold on to the things that are really meaningful and the things that went woefully bad, which is why I'll remember the Cell match and messing up and forgetting the words to Fruit Salad by the Wiggles almost exactly, except one will be a great victory, and the other will be a crushing disappointment.
We're gonna remedy the fruit salad situation eventually,
right?
The little boy in you, the fan in you, who hitchhiked to Madison Square Garden 14 years prior and saw this happen. I mean, I know we're not in Madison Square Garden.
7 miles away, I think.
We're not too far.
Yeah, it might even be less than that.
And it's for the same company, and it's a big time pay-per-view. It's a big opportunity, and it's an homage to this character you created in your backyard.
Yeah.
And we're watching right then. You live out as an adult man your childhood fantasy. And on some level, when I go through this with you today, I think about that famous line you had when you won the world title. Mrs. Foley's baby boy did it.
Yeah.
This is kind of really it here, more so than the belt, right?
Yeah, it's living out that childhood dream.
Yeah.
Although it didn't come off the top.
It was close.
The second rung of the, yeah.
It was close.
It was close enough, right? And it was a nice elbow. I mean, I don't get as much height and distance, and a lot of weight come down. It's probably about 290 at that time. So there's a lot of faith that Hunter had in me. I do remember Joni came in too early, but I liked it nonetheless.
Is it hard to reconcile? I'm not a wrestler. I'm never going to be a wrestler. I don't know what this feels like, but this is like the culmination of your wrestling dream on some level. And you've got to be proud about that. But you also said this is the maybe second most painful injury of all time. What's it like after the match? You've told us before that sometimes after a big match at a big moment, that euphoria sets in, and you're almost on like a natural high just about what you've accomplished. But at the same time, you're in fucking excruciating pain.
But you don't tend to feel it till the next day. I'd say the cell, there were injuries that happen where you feel them right away. This was something, after the several minutes of feeling the Chyna blow, I think I was in that state of euphoria, and I had my wife and children with me. So it wasn't the case where you go back to your room and now you're all by yourself.
Right.
I had my wife and kids. We made the drive the next day to Bethlehem, PA, with the intention of going to Hershey, which we did. But that was when I found out about Steve's injury. So
you weren't in the building.
I guess I bolted, I like to think I stayed till the end, but maybe because I had the kids, and it's always a little perilous to get out at the end of a show. It's a, anxiety inducer, being people, they pound on your car, whether they liked you or not. So it was always good to get out a little before. And so it wasn't until the next day where I saw Owen and said, how'd it go? And he went, the match was good, and then we got the news. Because I believe if I'd known of Steve's injury at the time, there would have ended that feeling of euphoria in an instant.
You wrote in your book, I've got to admit to taking some creative liberties with the story I've just written. In truth, the tattoo was almost invisible. It had become smudged during the match, and I was so afraid of falling when I got to the top. I actually flew from bar one below the top. Yeah. The rest of the description is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. So help me, dude. When you look back on that, and I know we don't want to watch it, I understand, but do you, where does this rank now? I know at this point it was the most important moment in your career. Where does this rank now? Is this a top 5?
No. I was really fortunate that I probably had almost 5 bigger moments with Hunter alone. Yeah. It was great at the time, but that's part of the wisdom of the escalation of goals. You hit that goal and then you just don't become complacent. You set your goals higher while still trying to appreciate the things you're doing while you're doing them. And I think that's one of the big balancing acts for anybody who wants to be the best, but also can appreciate the good times they're having while they're having them. But I think that's the minimum of guys who can actually go, wow, this is amazing. So it's tough to be the guy grabbing the brass ring is an old amusement park theme. I don't know if there's only a couple of brass rings, Knoebels Grove, for example, you go around and a mechanical arm comes out with a brass ring and you try to grab that with your fingers. It can be a little dangerous, which is, you're encouraging people to lean over off their horse. But it's fun to grab that brass ring. And Mr. McMahon loves that expression. It's tough to be the guy who reaches for the brass ring who can also stop and smell the flowers.
Yes.
Along the way. And so the guys who really make it almost have blinders on to where I think by and large, very few of us appreciate the journey like we should, or even appreciate the ride once it's over if it didn't get us where we wanted to go.
Take me back to that night. You come back through the curtain. Joni's there. Paul's there. Vince is there. Yeah. Is everyone happy, satisfied, relieved?
Yeah, probably all of the above. I don't think anyone thought it was a 2.5-star match, that we just seen the conclusion of. So yeah, everybody was happy, myself included, and I'm pretty tough on myself when it comes to these things.
We got a lot of questions and a lot of feedback about the show, but I do think this is a good one from Tyler Goodman. He says, Mick, did you feel as important being the first match on the card as you did being the last match on the card? And we've heard a lot of different schools of thought. I've heard some old school bookers say that, the most important match is the last match, but the second most important match is the first match. Yeah. And I've heard other people say, well, the first match is actually more important because it sets the tone for the rest of the night. If you can, I don't know, maybe take your performer hat off and just talk philosophy for a minute and then reinsert yourself in 1997. Was it cool to be the first match?
I didn't mind. I mean, I understood you get this huge object hanging overhead. That was one of the nice things about the blue bars in WWE is it can just be descended and hooked up as opposed to having to be the last match because by virtue of the fact it took 25 minutes to set up. And so now you'd have what is essentially a really long intermission before your main event, which can kill the momentum of the show. I would not say the first match is as important or more because you can have a bad match and end with a great show. It's tough to call it a great show when your main event doesn't deliver. And I think you're not really setting the tone with a cage match because you're not giving an indication of what's to follow. This was a night of many gimmicks, so to say. So I think it's it's a little bit different situation when you're in SummerSlam. But with that being said, I never let my spot in the crowd dictate to me how important my match was. Because Edge and I, for example, were probably number 3 or 4 at Mania in 2006. And we felt like we reserved the right to say that we were one of the best matches, if not the best match on the card. And that became my WrestleMania moment, despite the fact that it wasn't a main event. So I'm cool with going on first. I opened the show when I did my Hall of Fame induction, and I enjoyed that. Willie Nelson said there's nothing wrong with going on first, and a lot of times you get out of there early. Yeah. So leave them with a good impression and hit the bricks.
Where do you rank this with your matches with Triple H? Royal Rumble number 1?
Royal Rumble number 1. The cell match probably number 2. And we had some amazing house show matches. Just in the tent towns, we called Hyannis, Massachusetts, and Warwick, Rhode Island, Situate, Massachusetts. They held maybe 2,500 people in tents in these beach towns, and when Triple H, I had the salad tongs. You could get amazing bang for your buck by squeezing salad tongs on your opponent's genitalia. But Hunter had me give him essentially a Beal toss off the top of the rope using the salad tongs on his nose. And so here's a completely ludicrous spot that could never happen in real life. But Hunter would take the big, you get the thing and you take salad tongs, you bring them back here. Ooh, like you're casting a reel, like you're going for big fish out there. And he takes the big bump and the place would come unglued. They loved the silliness. So I would put a few of the house matches we had and also the return of Cactus Jack at Madison Square Garden. I would say this is probably in the top 10, but not top 5.
Let's talk about Snuka for a minute.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into a big debate about his legacy and history and all the controversy and all that. But did you ever get a chance after this to meet with him? And
oh, sure. Yeah. Many times. So I remember Tamina coming up to me in 97 when I first started talking about Jimmy and thanking me for really shining a light on what he did, because a lot of people are not even aware of that move.
I wasn't.
And so that was a lot of people's introduction, not only to that match, but Superfly, who was such a great character. And when he died, I wrote an article going back to the trust the art, not the artist, because otherwise you couldn't listen to John Lennon sing Imagine, because of the fact that his producer was the crazy guy.
Oh, yeah. Phil Spector.
Phil Spector. So unless you're willing to never listen to Imagine anymore or any of the great songs, it's really hard to, I guess some people can't differentiate. I think it's really important that we do separate the art from the artist and understand that the people who create great moments are sometimes lacking, in other skills. And in this case, that's not, I'm not downplaying what happened.
Right.
But I think I choose to.
It meant a lot to you in 83.
Yeah, it meant a lot to me. I probably wouldn't be here had I not had that moment. Felt like I wanted to have that same effect on people. But yeah, I knew Jimmy for many years. He was even part of the second in This Is Your Life that the Rock did for me. And he came out and he's supposed to say, "Let me tell you something, brother. The Superfly loves pie." And instead he comes out, he got his confectionery delights mixed up, and he said, "Let me tell you something, Brother Rock. The Superfly loves cake."
Not quite the same. Malik wants to know, when and where did you start making the sounds during your matches? The loud yelling sound you make when you're punching or kicking your opponent. When did that become a thing?
I don't know.
Just along the way.
It wasn't even a conscious decision. And I'm not sure Dude ever made those sounds. So I know I did them as Cactus and as Mankind. I know I liked being part of an all-inclusive sensory experience when I was a fan. So I liked the verbal wrestlers, just like I liked the verbal women's tennis players. You know, like there were some really good grunters. And that to me brought me
adds a new layer.
Yeah, add a new layer. And
my friend in high school, I had a wrestling friend named Brian Crutcher. And whenever we would talk about wrestling and, goof around, he would always make your noise. So to this day, anytime I watch one of your old matches, I think of my buddy Brian. Yes.
I don't remember. I don't know why I did it. It was just instinctive. And again, I don't think Dude did it. I think Dude was more like, Jay Lethal loved the line in the video game where I said, "Oh, lighten up, daddy." So you're actually asking your opponent to take it easy on you. That was more in keeping with the Dude spirit.
Yes.
But Cactus and Mankind were very verbal.
In this match, and it's pointed out by Johnny Sachs, I noticed at the beginning of the cage match, when you did the famous punches in the corner, you did a funny little Mankind strut, but then you went to the running knee spot and you threw up the bang bang guns and got a pop. Did you ever get any pushback on doing signature taunts of Cactus Jack while being Mankind, since it was a WCW gimmick?
Yeah. Well, at that time, we didn't believe there would be a Cactus Jack.
Even here in August, you didn't think so?
I don't think so.
Wow.
Not until I got to, not until I was told. I don't know when I found out. I had to have found out a day before, because I did go into the studio. But yeah, I went into the they made me a pair of tights, because I didn't have the Cactus tights, and I don't know what I wore for boots that day, to tell you the truth. So I maybe had 1 or 2 days lead time, and we probably were in the studio for 12 hours creating that video 3-minute interview. That takes a long time, the characters can't make contact. So for example, when I want to do the up high, down low, you're too slow. Up high, we have to do the contact outside the camera's frame so that they can then add that sound in, because you can't actually have the characters crossing over. So it was a lot of work. That was the same day, I believe, we did a new Dude Love. It was done. Let me go back and say, maybe there was a little lead time because I did it at the same time I did the Dude Love entrance video where he was flying through the air. And Dude, for whatever reason, is wearing the Undertaker's original hat. If you look at it, I think we took off or just tied the tie-dye around the Undertaker's purple, I don't want to say ribbon. I don't think the Undertaker wore ribbons, but it was whatever goes around the hat. But that's what he was wearing.
We need that to be quote tweeted somewhere. We need the clickbait sites to have the story that Undertaker per Mankind. We don't want to put that heat on you, but per Mankind, the Undertaker wore ribbons. That's a little receipt for forgetting him during the Hall of Fame speech. It's all full circle.
Today's episode is brought to you by CarShield, who makes it easy and affordable to protect my car from expensive repairs. And that's just for starters. CarShield is the #1 auto protection company in the U.S. and offers protection plans for around $100 a month. The plans cover more parts than ever before, whether your car has 5,000 miles or 150,000 miles. And let me tell you how simple it is to get your car fixed. When you need a repair, you choose the mechanic, and CarShield's administrators handle the rest. That's it. You don't have to deal with the paperwork or headaches. You're taken care of. Same goes if your car breaks down and you're stuck on the side of the road. Plans through CarShield also include coast-to-coast roadside assistance. CarShield administrators are there for you with rental car options and trip reimbursement at no extra cost too. Get coverage today and you'll lock in your price now and it will never go up. That means as long as you own your car, no matter how old it is, you're protected from the rising costs of parts and repairs for your vehicle. CarShield helps protect my wallet from expensive car repairs, and they'll do the same for you. Go to carshield.com/podcast to start your plan and lock in your pricing forever. That's carshield.com/podcast. A deductible may apply.
Woo Wings, a virtual restaurant concept from the man himself, the nature boy Ric Flair. Enjoy the legendary flavors and world championship wings by ordering with your Uber Eats or Postmates app. Woo Wings is now open in Nashville, San Antonio, Jacksonville, Florida, as well as Huntsville and Tuscaloosa in Alabama, with many more locations coming soon. Try the only chicken wings worthy of carrying the name of the 16-time world heavyweight champion. Tell him, Nate.
Wings! Legendary flavors! World Championship wings! Woo! Woo wings! Yeah! Woo woo! NMLS number 65084, equal housing lender. Woo!
The 5-star reviews are in and it's confirmed. SaveWithConrad.com can save you thousands. Jimmy E writes that we saved his family more than $1,000 a month. James S says we saved his family more than $1,200 a month. But how much can you save? It's free to find out right now at SaveWithConrad.com. But if you've got a second mortgage, if you've got credit card debt, or even worse, if you're in a 30-year loan, it's not a matter of if we can save you money, but a matter of how much at SaveWithConrad.com.
We'll be back next week talking all about the time you joined TNA. We'll talk about leaving WWE, making the decision to jump, the pros, the cons, the experience negotiating with them, Dixie Carter and the like. But now it's my favorite part of the show.
Oh, are we doing it?
We're doing it.
Let me see what we have. Do I have the phone over here? So this is Nick, who's given me permission to use this. I think it's going to be pretty epic, but I have a lot to live up to because he's gotten videos from a variety of people for the opening of their fantasy football league, and they're not they don't have to use the constraints that I do. All right, so I'm going to try to talk about this a little bit.
And I want to remind everybody, this is not a plug. This is just a PSA information.
Yeah.
Cameo.com/Mick
Foley.
And there it is. And by the way, be sure to do it on your desktop. Don't do it on your phone or Apple device.
Well, we just don't want them using the app because Apple takes an ungodly part of the proceeds. I don't think deep down that's what people want when they book.
I agree totally. So don't use the Cameo app. Use the website, cameo.com/Mick Foley.
All right, here we go. Ready? 3. Almost. 2. Hello to all participants. Not yet. Oh, man. I'll let you know. I'll give you the Iggy when it's time to do that.
Got it. Thought the countdown was for me.
And we're not going to stop. Deep down, the Degenerates League want to see the effort involved. All right, it's the hardcore legend for the Degenerates League of fantasy football. Oh, Nick, the commissioner, reached out to me, and Nick is a great guy. In order to make the guys in the Degenerates League more excited, they have a number of videos from number of videos with a cross section of the entertainment world. I have to tell you to all the participants that I can't match up to the young adult film star or use some of the words that she did, but I can match up by having a guest here who's one of the sexiest and most voluptuous stars of the Attitude Era. Let me see if I can find that person. He's coming up, and it's right here. It's me, Mankind, sporting these figures, 56, 52, 56. What a winning hand. This is Mankind, or Man in a Mankind mask. As you know, there's a copyright issue, but deep down, I'm the same guy who defeated Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson twice to become WWE champion. And this is for your surprise pre-draft promo for the boys. I'm welcoming newcomers Ron, the Evil Lurch, and KY Kyle. I don't know if KY stands for Kentucky or your favorite lubricant. I'm not going to ask those type of questions. You don't have to give me those answers. And now, without further ado, or should I say a dude, I have to give it back to Mick because I can't read the rest of the writing on the wall. Have a nice day. Wow. Well, that was really nice to have Mankind in there, if just for a little while. Hey, let's hit the music. Oh, there we go. The Notre Dame fight song. That's right. I know you Degenerates League. You're a bunch of idiots and proud of it. The words yins and mac sauce are league inside jokes right now. And you talk about creative nicknames. We're talking about Swan, Ellen, Joel, Jay Sad, and Lurch. Last year, Nick, the commissioner, finished in last place. A commissioner finishing in last and had to wear a toilet bowl costume in public. By God, no more chicken suits. We need a toilet bowl costume in public. Ended up having a random hillbilly guy with his kids take picture of Nick, the commissioner. Basically, I know you guys like to have fun. Don't take yourself too seriously. You have a custom title belt, a punishment wheel, and play your own league theme song too. Well, I don't have access to that theme song, but we're playing that Notre Dame fight song because I want you to keep fighting for what's right and what's best. And I hope that all of your days are nice. Oh, that was a 2.5. That was a 2.5 star. Oh man, that was a 2.5 star video.
I'll give you the Iggy when it's time to do that. Okay, all right.
What do you think?
I mean, listen, if you want to do a 4-star effort, I'm here for you.
No, I'm good with that.
Serious business.
It's like you can't have the volume turned up you can't turn in a masterpiece at all times. That doesn't mean I don't want him to give me a 5-star rating.
They made it real too.
Yeah.
We could see the real effort.
Yeah, with all due respect to Will Ospreay, he doesn't have the number of 5-star reviews that I do. So even though that was a 2.5-star match, I would like the commissioner Nick to give me a 5-star rating. I
might even go so far as to say you had more than 4 5-star reviews in the last month. So technically, doing our wrestling math. Anyway,
all right,
boys and girls, check it out. Cameo.com/Mick Foley. Don't use the app, use the website. And don't forget, tomorrow you can see Mick and I and Eric Bischoff and Tony Schiavone and Jeff Jarrett and Jim Ross and the Nature Boy himself, all inside of a wrestling ring, raising money for Mongo.
So it's going to be like a big podcast with all of us there?
A super show, buddy. Wow. Come on. How fun is that?
That sounds amazing. And I've had, history. Every one of us has had history with each other.
Yes.
It's not like anybody on that in that ring will be a stranger to each other.
I can't wait to have some conversation about butts and seats with you and Tony Schiavone. Maybe have some conversations about glorified stuntmen with Mick Foley.
No, I think that we're past that.
Let's just see. I mean, I got an extra sock if you don't.
Let's throw it out there. Okay.
Maybe.
Ric Flair, let me just, for the record, Ric Flair did chop me with a sock puppet that had barbed wire around it.
He told me, and I don't know what this means. You're more in this wrestling business than I'll ever be. He tells me he's bringing a blade. I don't know what that even means. He says, I'll have one on me. If we're getting in the goddamn ring, I'm going to have a blade. I'm like,
Rick and I, no one will ever take away the fact that we had the bloodiest interview segment of all time in TNA. And it was just prefaced by Terry Taylor coming in and saying, all right, you and Rick, you have 10 minutes. do that thing with each other that only the two of you understand. the strange chemistry we had. So we would go out there with this much in mind of what the other guy was going to be doing. And part of the fun of being out there with Rick was acting and reacting.
Yes.
You know, I will probably cover this bloody video segment in more detail in the future, but I'm proud of that it was the bloodiest interview segment of all time.
Hey, and I'm proud that you stopped by Nashville and came and sat in the front row and brought your son and got to see Ric Flair's last match. And coincidentally, he was your last match, I think. What a small world.
Yeah. I mean, you can argue that Royal Rumble 2012, or when I came out and took on the League of Nations with Steve and Sean. But when it's a given and everyone in the ring knows you're on the no touch list, it's a little different than being in there. So the last singles match I had, last match of any consequence, other than the Royal Rumble, where, you know, I was out for 4 or 5 minutes, did the memorable thing with Santino and had trouble breathing for 10 days because I was so out of shape. I in my heart, I think of the match with Rick as my last one, and I thought it was really something special.
And we'll see what we can create tomorrow for Mongo. Moneyformongo.com, 12:30 Central. That's local Chicago time, 1:30 Eastern. It's a free show, y'all, but we're raising money for Mongo. Every nickel goes to Mongo and his lovely wife, Misty. Go to moneyformongo.com. Mick, thanks so much for coming by all the way down to Huntsville today. This was great, man.
It's been a lot of fun. Thanks for having me. Grillo, great job as usual. And just get the word out. Let people know that Foley is Pod is out there.
Every single week. We'll see you next week talking all things TNA.
Yeah.
Right here on Foley is Pod.